are now tuned into the MECE Muse Unplugged, a pop-up podcast variety show helping consultants along their journey to greatness with your host, management consultant, author and blogger, Christy Lindor.
Hey, my go-getters. Welcome to the MECE Muse Unplugged podcast show. For today's episode, this is actually episode 17, our second edition of the Welcome Back to Campus series. Super excited to have a conversation about internships to offer. So for today, what we're going to do, we're going to actually kick off the episode with a Crossroads interview. For those that are new to the show, Crossroads are when we have an opportunity to connect with a person that's going in or out of consulting, and we talk a little bit about their journey and kind of where they're headed. Today, as I mentioned, it is the intern edition, so we had a chance to connect with Briana. A little bit about Briana. She's currently finishing up her last year at Seton Hall University. She did a two-year internship that ultimately landed to her getting a full-time offer, which is awesome. On today's Crossroads, she's going to talk about her journey and some of the tips and techniques that she used to kind of first secure the internship, be invited back for a second year, which ultimately led to her offer. So we'll get a chance to connect with Briana. Really great conversation. We'll also have an opportunity in today's career dilemma. I actually had a chance to talk with an intern that did not get an offer extended. And we want to kind of give a little bit of guidance. So Briana and I are going to talk a little bit about what that person should consider moving forward. And lastly, we're also going to do, I'm going to do like a MECE Mentoring Moment. I want to give some additional thoughts based on the conversation that Briana and I have, and give you, my go-getters, ideas and tips on, what you should consider, not only to secure an internship, but also what are really the things that matter in an internship. I think sometimes there's kind of different perceptions out there. I want to kind of talk a little bit about that and, really, figure out how to prepare for internships. So with that, let's get started.
Thank you, Briana, for taking time to join us on the MECE Muse Unplugged. How are you doing today?
Doing good. I'm so excited. This is like my first podcast ever, so I was a little bit nervous at first, but I'm definitely excited to be, giving in some advice and sharing my story.
Oh, you're going to be fabulous. You're a go-getter. If you're being interviewed for a podcast, you are a go-getter. So nothing to be nervous about. But actually, so I guess before we get started with today's interview, if you want to take a moment to introduce yourself to the go-getters of the MECE Muse Unplugged.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so right now I'm going into my senior year. I'm attending Seton Hall University. I'm majoring in accounting and information systems, but I'm also doing a dual degree, so I'll be also getting a master's in professional accounting. I actually interned last summer at one of the big four, and I was fortunate enough to be offered another internship this past summer. And then at the end of that summer, I was lucky enough to actually get a full-time offer, so I'm super excited to start that at the end of, college and everything, and just kind of, it's good to just have something secured in. So yeah, that's just a little bit about my work experience. I had two summer internships pretty much, and I'm basically finishing my last year of school now.
Awesome. So congratulations on getting your offer. How did you feel, the moment that you got it? Like, did they give you hints that you were going to get the offer, or did they leave you in the dark? Give us a little bit of when you first found out.
Yeah, so I guess they kind of give you hints. Your team will kind of hint here and there, next summer, or when you're here again next summer, or things like that. But I mean, you never really know. I've heard people who've had amazing feedback throughout their internships and have not received offers just because some places are so competitive. But definitely, even though I was getting that positive feedback, I wasn't, certain of it. So when I got the offer, I was definitely jumping up and down, so excited, because it's obviously so amazing to have something secured before you're even done with school, because you just, that's the scary part, just not knowing what comes next.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, you know, it's interesting, Brianna. I didn't realize that you were in a dual program. So you're going to be finished. So you're have you already finished up your undergrad and like this is your going to be like your master's year? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the program you're currently in.
Yes. Initially, I was going to do my 4 years undergrad and then a fifth year for my master's. But I remember last year, actually, I spoke with my advisor, and he said, you know, you can do it in 4 years. Basically, what happened is your last senior year, you would do your first semester would be split between half undergrad classes, half graduate, and then your final semester would just be all graduate. So he said, you know, he said you could do that route. That would save you a little bit of money, a little bit of time, but you're going to have to continue with the 18 credits. So it's definitely a sacrifice, I guess. But in the long run, I mean, it's up to you if you want to go the route of kind of getting it all done really fast, or if you want to take your time. I know people who have done it in 5 years and the outcome is just as great. So it's just a matter of preference. But yeah, doing it in 4 years for me was definitely like, I wanted to just be out in the working world and getting my, you know, connections out there and things like that. So for me, that's just kind of what worked for me.
Yeah, it's a great hack. 4 years, bachelor's, master's, job offer, done.
Yeah.
I love it. Love it. So maybe you can share with the go-getters, maybe you can share some couple of moments you had when you think about, you know, the internship experiences that you've had, you know, for the last 2 years or so. Maybe start off like, you know, start this conversation like, how did you get started? Like, what made you decide to apply, you know, for the internship programs? Like, how did you find out about them? And maybe like help, you know, for some, you know, listeners out there that maybe, you know, they're in their junior year and they're thinking about, you know, kind of going down the path that you've already gone through. Maybe share a little bit about like how you got started and what piqued your interest.
It's actually a pretty funny story because my sophomore year is actually when I heard about the first internship with one of the big four that I applied for. I actually was in the career center, not even looking to, you know, find an internship. I was only a sophomore, so I kind of had the mindset where, oh, I'll wait till junior year. It's really no rush. And at the same time, I wasn't aware that all the deadlines are usually in the fall, so I kind of like missed those deadlines. So I really just was like not even considering a summer internship. So I remember I was in the career center one day and I'm working on my resume, and my career advisor says, you know, have you applied anywhere? And I said, no, I actually, you know, I missed all the deadlines, but, you know, I just plan on working this summer and then I look for an internship next summer. And she said, well, we got an email today from this company. They're doing an internship. It's actually targeted for, you know, sophomores, juniors, and up. Would you want to apply? So I said, when is the deadline? And she goes, you know, the deadline's today. And I said, oh, okay, well, I mean, I had nothing to lose. So I said, all right, you know, even though it's a rush, like, you never know. So I applied. That's actually how I got the internship. And I think like a month later, I got the call. I went in for the interview, and then they called me the next day and they said, okay, we'd like to offer you the internship. So definitely it was a spur of the moment kind of thing. I you know, they always say like when you're not looking for something, it kind of falls in your lap. That was kind of the case for me, but I'm definitely so grateful that I did, you know, apply that day because I was offered an internship for the next summer. I fell in love with the people there, the culture, and now I'll be working there full time the coming year. So.
Yeah, that sounds like it. Honestly, sounds like it was truly meant to be. Yeah. And it's so funny how when something is truly meant to be yours, how like easy things fall into place, whether you realize it or not. I find that's just life. It feels like things. I don't know about you, Brianna, but for me, when there's certain things that I'm trying to do and they're just so hard, and then the things that I don't want, I'm like, it's okay, and then it's like easy. It's so. I don't know why life is like that, but that's great. That's great. So, you know, when you talked about doing the internship and you went in for an interview, tell us a little bit about the interview process. Like, what type of interviews did you have? Was it like one? Was it with a group? Or share a little bit about like your recruitment experience.
Okay, yeah. So when I went for my interview for the internship 2 summers ago, it was relatively the same as the one I went for last summer, a little bit more informal. So I kind of wasn't expecting it. It was a pleasant surprise, I'd say, because I was expecting kind of a panel of people and those kinds of questions back and forth like that. But it was more informal. It was one-on-one. I went through 3 rounds, 2 being in the office and then 1 being a lunch kind of interview in that sense, kind of just getting to know who I was, you know, how I was in school, things like that. The in-office interviews were just as easygoing as the lunch, I'd say. They, of course, throw in some behavioral questions here and there, but it was more of kind of, getting to know me and my personality, just kind of to see if I'm a good fit for the company, if I fit in with the culture. And I guess that just comes more with, the position you're applying for. I was applying for an internship, so I guess the questions, of course, will vary more than if you're applying for a specific job. But definitely just an easygoing interview asking me about school, how do I balance school and work, things like that. So
Okay. And what advice would you give to someone that, maybe, preparing to go into some type of, internship interview? Obviously, like the summer's over now, but like what advice would you give them in hindsight?
I would say definitely don't try to, find questions and memorize answers. I think my thing was what I kind of did. I was lucky enough to have a course for business writing where one of the things was we did a mock interview, and that kind of set me up for that, where the whole, strategy was to just kind of know a bunch of questions and have like a key topic in mind where you can kind of tell a story in a sense, but definitely not to memorize anything. A lot of things is, like I said, behavioral questions. So tell us about a time when, you were faced with a challenge. And so you have like, a few pointers in your head about maybe 2 different types of stories that you could possibly come up with, but definitely like not to memorize and just, I guess, not be nervous. My first time around, I was obviously so nervous. It was a major company. And so I kind of was like psyching myself out a little bit. But once I met like the first interviewer and you realize like, they're just kind of trying to get to know who you are. It's more of a conversation than anything. That's like how you kind of ease your nerves and like, I guess, yeah, just definitely don't memorize.
Yeah. And how about, I hear sometimes from especially college students, they get nervous because they don't have a lot of experience, to put on their resume. Like, what were some things you maybe, used, to create your resume when, this is the first time, really getting into like a major kind of corporation?
Yeah, I guess the good thing about that is, especially when you're starting younger and in college, like no one really expects you to have any, crazy experience. What I was told, and I think it worked for me, was any job you have, even if you think it's, okay, you worked at a summer camp, like, oh, how does that translate to someone entering, an accounting firm or something like that? Everything translates in terms of the skills that you learn there. So it's kind of like wording things in your resume to transfer those skills in a way that you could use them in a more professional setting. So I know for me, I did a lot of retail work. And so just wording things like, I don't know, censoring merchandise to reduce shrinkage or things like that. Just kind of those little wordings are what makes the real difference so that they see that you're working for a purpose. You're not just listing like, oh, I cleaned the bathroom. Just kind of things like that. It's all about the wording. And even things like, I know for me, I was co-directing a youth group in my church, and I didn't think that was relevant to put on my resume, but, they asked me about that in my interview, and it's just a talking point, and it also brings out little things like how, you show leadership and you're contributing to something that's like, you're not getting paid for it, so they kind of see like, you're charitable, you want to do things to help, you're not just like someone that is all about the grades. So just like showing that you have dimension to, who you are.
Hey, go-getters. Have feedback on today's show? Questions on consulting? Want to be a guest? We'd love to hear from you. Just drop us a line at MECEMuseUnplugged@gmail.com. That's MECEMuseUnplugged@gmail.com. You can also show us your support by downloading episodes, spreading the word to friends and family, or leaving us a review. Remember, MECE Muse Unplugged is a pop-up podcast, which means we'll stick around as long as we continue to hear from you. Thank you for your support. Now back to today's show.
Now that once you kind of got like your internship in the bag, you're 2 years in now, you've done a couple of years, maybe share some moments with us. I'd love to hear like a defining moment, in your internship where you like, it was like a big aha moment where you learned something that you realized was going to be important for your career. And then on the flip side, if you can also maybe share like what was a challenging moment that you kind of wasn't expecting and how you overcame them.
For a defining moment, I guess we'll start with the good. I'd definitely say it was the day that my team that I was working with actually allowed me to sit in on a client meeting. As an intern, I guess, I mean, you take what you can get, especially during the summer. I'd say it's not as busy. So I would say like the staff alone don't really have too much work, but so you take what you can get. And so the day that they asked me to sit on a client meeting, I was in shock, of course. I remember I was in the office, so I had to actually travel out there, but it was something that I was so excited to do. And I learned so much just by sitting in. You obviously are not, talking and contributing in that way, but you're sitting in and you're absorbing the information and you get to see, how is it that this company interacts with the clients? What are the things that are discussed in these meetings? How is it that you're supposed to compose yourself around the client? And just things like that. And just hearing, just discussions about what the client does, it just helps you to gain a better understanding, I guess, in that sense. So definitely just, even though it was 2 meetings that I sat in, I learned so much in that, how is it that these things even take place? And it's all about the communication between the company and the client.
That is a valuable experience for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then for a challenging moment, I'd say it was definitely the first few weeks, just kind of adjusting back from, classroom setting to a working world. I think the hardest thing at first was kind of getting to understand what the client did and like their structure in terms of their controls, their processes and things like that. And kind of transitioning from more of a black and white kind of thing where, you're in school, you know the material you have to study, you take the test and that's that. But in the real world, it's not really like that. You kind of have to, think critically and think outside the box. So I remember one of the first things that they assigned me was performing walkthroughs. And so that involves, taking a sample, looking at the controls for that sample and things like that, and kind of piecing together support that the client sends out. And so for me, I was totally just lost at first, and I was like scared to ask questions because I didn't want to seem like I didn't know what I was doing. But at the same time, I guess like the important thing there is to realize they don't expect you to know anything. So for me, I had to, figure out that it's okay to ask questions, and from there kind of, okay, now when I'm asking these questions, how do I translate that, think outside the box for myself and figure this out on my own? That was definitely the toughest part at first.
Definitely. So with that, I actually have one last question before we pivot, and I want to talk to you about the intern dilemma that I've been shared with. But what tips or advice, now that you're sitting on the other side of the house with an offer, which is fabulous, like what advice would you give other college students that are looking to not only gain internship experience, but hoping to really convert that into an offer? Like, what advice would you give them?
I would say the main thing is, I know it sounds a little bit cliche because I've heard this so much, but definitely just being open. It's like the biggest thing out there. It's such a general thing to say, but being open, not only does it open so many doors for like new experiences and things like that, but it just, like, at this age, we're like sponges. We're absorbing everything. And so kind of being closed-minded and turning things down just because you think you may know how it's going to be, but you don't really know, that's like not the way to go. So definitely just being open and kind of jumping at anything you can get. And definitely I'd say being positive, like no matter what you have going on at home or at school, like when you're there to work, just kind of be positive, especially at this stage when, we're just starting out. People, they're not going to want to work with someone who's negative, and like it's understandable that you're going to have some off days, but just overall having a smile on your face because you want to be approachable. That way you get the work, you get things, you get new tasks to do, and then that's how you learn more, and it's just the cycle continues. And so definitely being open and being positive.
Great advice. So with that, thank you for answering those questions. With that, I'm actually going to pivot slightly. I mentioned, this is actually not an email. It was a conversation I was having with somebody in the last couple of days where they were really bummed out. This individual, she didn't get an offer. So you were very lucky, Briana, but she actually did a couple years internship as well, and she did not get an offer, and she was pretty bummed about that. And, I had some, kind of words of encouragement for her, things to consider. But, given kind of where you are now, I know you talked about being open and being a sponge and being positive. for someone who's kind of sitting on the other side of the fence, like what type of advice would you give them now, knowing what you know?
I would definitely say, of course, don't give up. I feel like life happens. Life is just really funny in itself, in that what's meant to be is meant to be. And so maybe that job wasn't the right job for this particular person. Definitely just keep looking, don't give up. Use the free time wisely, whether it's, looking for a different internship or, studying for, be it like an exam that you have for certification or things like that. Even going out there and getting a certificate in something, just things to help boost you up. That way, it's even harder for people to turn you down. But sometimes I know a friend of mine who, this amazing company in the financial industry, she didn't get the offer, but that's not to say that she wasn't qualified or things like that. It's just to say, it didn't add up or at the specific time in that person's life. So I definitely just say, yeah, don't give up. Keep pushing through. What's meant to be will be. And, look for something else, because there's always something out there. And obviously, if you were given these, opportunity for 2 different internships, you're an amazing individual and you have that good work experience. So use that to, push through and find something new.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's actually a little bit of the advice that I gave her as well. A couple other things that, and I talked to her about, it's kind of along the lines you were just saying, Briana, really that this could be a blessing in disguise. I actually had a colleague of mine that fell into consulting. I'm actually trying to get him to interview for the show. Our schedules haven't connected yet with, but he fell into consulting because he had an internship at another company and they had declined the offer. And that was through that process was how he was ending up, he ended up getting an offer and really loving, he thought the other role was going to be great. He's like, this is actually even better. So it goes back to the point you just said. I think it could be a blessing in disguise for sure. So, for any of my go-getters out there that you just finished an internship, didn't get the offer, I like to focus on what I do have, right? And so, now you can take a step back. There's something you can add to your resume. You've got this amazing experience. Make sure to stay connected with those people. Really be grateful. Be really grateful, because there's nothing like experience in this world. Like experience to me is your currency to anything you want to do, right? It's experience and relationships. So the fact that you had an opportunity to kind of grow both is an amazing opportunity. To consider that. Consider that you're walking away, you're adding something really substantial. Make sure you stay connected with those people, whether they're through LinkedIn, let them know what's happening. And things change. The tide changes a lot. So even people that didn't get an offer, like you never know, 6 months down the line, you may end up reapplying, or they may reach back out. If you stay connected, as Briana said, be positive and be open. You never know what's kind of coming around the bend, so for those, that like, the individual I was speaking to, stick it out. You'll be fine. Just really think about the amazing experiences you did have and the connections you made. And if that in itself is priceless. Briana, if you've got anything else you want to add to that.
Oh, yeah, I agree with everything you said. Definitely at this age, you call them go-getters. That's like what everyone at this stage in their life should be, trying to, push forward, find any opportunity out there that's going to help them as an individual. I know that's like what I did. And I was fortunate enough to, like I said, I applied at the last minute and I fell in love with the company. For some people, it's not how it turns out. But, we're young. We get to move around, and that's the beauty of life. So,
right. Well, I know you're going to have a fabulous year. What an amazing feeling, like walking back into your last year with your job. So quick sidebar. I actually got my first consulting career role. I got it. I think it was I want to say it was in October. Yeah. So I started, September, the start of the school year, October, I got my job offer and I was graduating in May. So I had super major senioritis.
Yeah.
So I would say in hindsight, maybe I think I could have used that time a little better, because I think I was just so excited. I got my offer. I was just kind of like, oh, like whatever. But I think it's a good time to really kind of get ready, right? Like whatever get ready means for you, it means for your family, it means in terms of like wrapping up certain things, whether it's academic or if it's, just whatever that means for you. I would say use the time wisely. I think I personally stepped out of senioritis, like I think 2 weeks before I graduated. I snapped out because I was like, what'd you say?
I said that's not too bad. Some people snap out like this summer before.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta get it together. Like I have to be an adult now. But yeah, I would say definitely like use this time and really kind of, continue to prepare. And, just as I mentioned with even the person that, didn't get the offer, just like you got your offer, but stay connected with everyone you've met and over the next year, and you'll walk in with a ready-made kind of, network and brand. And I wish you the best, Briana. I think you're going to do great things.
Hope you enjoyed the conversation I had with Briana. Wanted to round out some additional thoughts. So this is going to be a quick MECE mentoring moment. As I said at the top of the episode, I want to kind of round out some thoughts on, one, how to start to prepare for internships. And now is the time. It's the end of September. This is the perfect time. Go-getters, if you're thinking about interning at a consulting firm, want to talk about kind of how to prepare, how to land a role. And two, I also want to kind of talk about what are some things to do once you have arrived at a firm and make the best of that internship, and how you can potentially turn an internship to an offer in the future. So starting with kind of how to find internships, I think, the easy answer, right, is, to really leverage your career center. So now's a really great time to start to, really kind of update your resume, making sure that you have a really great cover letter. I think you start to kind of, put that together really well. Don't neglect any experiences you have on campus and leadership positions. If you've done volunteer work, I think sometimes I've heard from, folks in college, they feel like they don't have enough on their resume. I think that's fine. Firms know that you are just starting out in your career, and they know that you're in school. So I don't think, firms are really seeking for you to have like a lot of, really kind of work experience, but you should have some sort of experience to really demonstrate your ability to think strategically, that really demonstrate your leadership position, to demonstrate your, your motivation and your drive and perseverance. So think about what are some, situations where you have that, and round that out in your cover letter and your resume. Connect with your career center for sure. Find out what opportunities that they may be privy to. Firms are typically starting to do their recruiting now. This is actually the season for it. So definitely check out what you can find in your career center. On another note, connect with your, if you're part of any student union or any type of kind of student organization, connect with them as well. You'd be very surprised how, if you're connected in a specific kind of a Greek organization, if you're connected to any type of kind of professional association that may have a student chapter, those are definite opportunities and outlets as well for you to figure out like how to land one. And your own connection. So, look at your classmates, your own peer, talk to people that your parents may know, check out who you may be connected to on LinkedIn or Facebook that may have an into these organizations. So I think it's just doing a little bit of research, figuring out who you're connected to, and don't be afraid to really kind of reach out and do kind of informational interviews. And when I say informational interviews, really that means, you connect with someone that may work at a firm that you're interested in on LinkedIn. And especially if you're in college, I'm telling you, firms and especially seasoned consultants, they love speaking to college students. And so I'm definitely reach out to folks, that you may have a second degree connection to that can give you a little bit more insights about their particular firm. So you want to try and kind of exhaust different options when it comes to landing a specific type of role. And another thing, go-getters, I want you to think about is if you're not able for whatever reason to land a specific consulting role at a consulting firm, don't underestimate the fact that organizations, any type of organization out there, they actually sometimes have rotational programs, and they have like what, kind of an internal consulting function. And or you may be able to land, like a finance internship or a marketing internship. Don't underestimate those experiences as well, and try again in the future for whatever reason you're not able to land it, because as a consultant, it's always great to have kind of industry experience. And if you can do so in internships, you can always, you can use that as leverage for future opportunity. So you want to start to kind of position yourself now. And my go-getters that are, in their freshman or sophomore year, it's never too early to begin to kind of round that out. Maybe too early for you to start to think about that. But you want to kind of, start as soon as possible, I'd say. So that's one thing around, preparing and landing an internship. I want to quickly talk about like how to make the best of an internship. So I'd say most of the larger firms, they have a really rigorous kind of internship program, because that's their way to vet their future talent. So chances are, if you go to like one of the bigger firms, you may be able to have an opportunity to get exposure to client work, to help, seasoned consulting teams solve, cases, or help them round out or implement a project, which is fantastic experience. As I was mentioning, with my conversation with Briana, consulting internships are about experience and connections. I think I said that backwards. I think, if you're on an internship, your primary objective, honestly, is to connect. That really is you want to make a first impression, a lasting impression that you have potential to perform. But it's really about the connections you make and the connections you take back with you, and sustaining those connections throughout the year. I think that is really, really critical. And, I've heard some interns, internships are kind of sometimes are hit or miss, right? Sometimes you land an amazing one and you get really great, experience, and you work with, individuals that really know how to leverage an intern. And then sometimes not so much, sometimes, people don't really know how to really work with interns, and that's okay. I think it's making the best of what you have. I've heard interns, really kind of complain sometimes about feeling like they didn't do enough, or, they were expecting a lot more than they did, or they were doing kind of more admin work. Whatever you're given, make the most of it, right? Make the most of that. And I think you want to make sure you walk away with some really good opportunities and networking with various different leaders, various different, people that are in kind of the executive. I call it, there's kind of two sets. So there's the executive layer, which in most firms is kind of like your managers or senior managers or, project leaders. Sometimes, it depends on the firm, right? There's different titles, but kind of that layer, right? And then you have your senior executive layer, which is, your managing directors, your partners, your principals, etc. So you want to make sure that you're making connections with those individuals where you can, because they, you can kind of consider, continuing to build that and foster that relationship for future opportunities. But I think also, connecting with your, people that are just above you. So, the consultant levels, the staff levels, analyst levels, or senior consultants. So you want to make sure that you connect with them as well, because they kind of have their ears to the ground, and they can really help you and give you some additional insights that sometimes the executive or senior executive layers, they may be kind of far removed from. So don't lose sight of that. I think one of my pet peeves personally is when I get a chance to connect with an intern, and they may have been really impressive for that summer, and then I never hear from them again up until, maybe they get another internship sometimes they don't, or they get an offer, and then I kind of run into them, on an elevator. And, I think those are missed opportunities, because, I've actually seen this. This actually even happened this summer. I actually seen a couple people. I'm like, man, I really wish I kind of, heard from them. I didn't know what happened to them. And I actually had projects. I know people who were looking for their skill sets, and it's it was kind of missed opportunity. So you want to make sure, if you make impressions, you make connections with people, you really sustain those. You take those with you, because that's really the point. The point is to make those connections, to learn about the firm and learn about the culture, and, figure out if this is something you want to do moving forward. So with that actually wraps up today's MECE Mentoring Moment and wraps up our episode. I want to thank Briana again for her time. Had a really great conversation with her. And thank you, my go-getters, for tuning in today. This is Christy Lindor signing out for the MECE Muse Unplugged pop-up podcast. Here's to your journey to greatness.
Tune in every Friday for new episodes syndicated on iTunes, Google Play Music, and many more. Visit www.mecemuse.com for more information.